This video is by Straight Goods News, SGNews.ca.
This government to get on board with others, the United States, Europe, is further ahead than Canada when it comes to full transparency with regards to the extractive industry. So we're glad they're finally getting on board. That's my initial reaction. But we have to look at what the details are. Is this going to be full compliance of Canadian companies doing their business abroad, disclosing all of their financials and their activities? If that's the case, great. But why didn't they do this before? I mean, we've been, frankly, laggards on this issue. I'm glad that Prime Minister Cameron brought this up. When it's his agenda, Prime Minister Cameron's agenda. So we want to see the details on this. When I asked a question the other day in the House of Commons, we had a parliamentary secretary get up and had no clue what I was talking about. It was talking about, oh yes, we're going to have more information on the internet. No, this is about Canadian companies, the extractive companies, doing what they're doing abroad and making sure that they're fully transparent. And if they are going to do that, then we have to see the details, because this requires a shift in Canadian policy. When we pushed the government on this before, they said it was too expensive, we shouldn't get in the way of business, and they gave us all the reasons not to do it. Now we have them flip-flopping on it, and all of a sudden there's a conversion on this issue. Glad to see it. Let's look for the details.
So what kind of details about transparency will you be looking for?
Well, first of all, what kind of mechanism is the government going to put in place to ensure that companies are being fully transparent and compliant with disclosure of their activities abroad? If they're just going to say, well, we'll leave it up to companies to do that voluntarily, that's not enough. We need to see some legislation in place, some regulation in place to ensure that's going to happen. That's why these details are very important. It's all very nice for the Prime Minister to say, great, we're on board with this, but if they don't follow up with proper regulation and enforcement, then these are just empty words.
What specifically do you want them to be transparent about, though?
This is an initiative around the Canadian extractive companies, when they're doing their business abroad, being fully transparent about whom they're paying, how much money they're receiving, and ensuring that there's full transparency in their business dealings. So in order to ensure that that is happening, we have to have government oversight. And in terms of ensuring that that's going to happen, there needs to be some regulation that ensures that Canadian companies are being compliant. Otherwise, you just have a voluntary process, and that's not good enough. You have to have something that actually has rules in place that can be checked and that there can be oversight with.
So you never heard, we're bringing in a law?
No. What I heard from the Prime Minister's comments is we're in favor of this initiative by Prime Minister Cameron. The G8 meetings are about trying to find a common cause, and we usually see in the communiques that there are plans to, in case of years ago, it was about development in Africa. In this case, there was the maternal health initiative of this government. We look for those communiques and study them carefully, but then we look at what actually is going to follow the communiques, what rules are going to be put in place, and that's where we can actually see if the government's taking this seriously.
So if Cameron never brought it up, you don't think the Prime Minister ever would have?
I didn't see it coming from this government at all. In fact, what I saw was pushback. We were quite excited to see Prime Minister Cameron come forward with what his agenda was. It was the 3 T's. It was on transparency, taxation, and trade.